We're going to talk about something that's, I think, incredibly important to any organization embarking on digital transformation, which is how they manage the customer journey, how they engage with customers, how they capture feedback, and how they consistently reinvent that customer experience ongoing to maintain competitiveness. I'm Justin Vaughan Brown, Digital Transformation Lead within CA. I'll be the panel host today. And I'm not the star at all. We have three real stars from the customer experience perspective. Lilian Tomovich from MGM, who's literally had to kind of come, half a mile or so, is it? Something like that, ish. Dayton Semerjian, who heads up our customer success team, and Jason Bloomberg, president of Intellyx, a leading analyst consultancy. So rather than me introduce each of them, I think it'd be nice if each one kind of talked a little bit about their role in helping to promote the customer experience as a subject, and a little bit about their professional background in this area. So first of all, over to you, Lily.
Sure. So thank you for that. So Lilian Tomovich with MGM Resorts. Title is Chief Experience Officer, and the way I explain it is, think about it as I'm responsible for all marketing functions for all of our resorts and restaurants and entertainment properties. But because we are in the hospitality and entertainment business, really what we deliver, we're not marketing to people, we're really delivering experiences, and that's truly what differentiates us here on the Strip. We own pretty much 50% of the Strip, the rest is our competitors, and so when you walk the Strip, everybody has hotel rooms, casinos, restaurants, theaters, and entertainment. The only thing that truly, I like to think that MGM Resorts has the best selection of those, but at the end of the day, what really differentiates us is our ability to deliver customer experiences. And we're not perfect, but we absolutely try, and we're very, very focused on delivering a more consumer-centric organization.
Thanks, Lee.
Sure, thank you. I'm Dayton Semerjian, and I run the customer success organization for CA Technologies. We are an organization whose mission is to deliver a superior customer experience. We have a customer experience design organization, a customer experience delivery organization, a voice of customer organization, the global support organization as well. And we've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years focused on looking at and optimizing the end-to-end customer experience for all of our customers who are out here today and here on the floor. My background, I've been a chief marketing officer 3 times, so I know that's a lot of work, big challenges there. I started my career in sales. I worked in a strategy consulting firm putting together profitable growth strategies, and I have done a lot of work in operational efficiency and Six Sigma as well.
Okay. Thanks, Dayton. Jason.
Well, I'm Jason Bloomberg, president of Intellyx, and Intellyx is an analyst firm that focuses on agile digital transformation. So most analysts, they pick a technology area and focus just on that, but by focusing on digital transformation, it's focusing on the problem space more so than the technology. So really trying to help the digital professional who may or may not be a technology person understand how all the different technology trends support the end-to-end digital transformation challenge. So to understand how digital transformation and customer experience connect, I'll basically define how I see that word digital. What does the word digital mean? And what digital means to me is that customer experience and preferences, customer preferences and behavior drive enterprise technology decisions. So it begins with the customer, and the customer is driving technology decisions, but the only reason that digital is about technology at all is because customers are demanding that. So if you think about everything that a customer demands from a company, there's a full spectrum of different things. It's not all technology, right? It's a lot of different things. And we're talking about digital because technology is an important part of the story, but you don't want to separate digital from the rest of the customer experience. It has to be a unified customer-focused perspective, which means that technology is an integral part of the story, but customer experience is more than just technology. And unfortunately, we have that word digital, and it suggests it's about technology. But I don't see digital as about technology at all. It's about the customer. So that's how I see all these stories, fitting together.
Thanks, Jason. That actually sets us up nicely for a little bit of a buzzword bingo here. We're going to ask our panel to give their definitions of some of the kind of buzzwords and themes that we see related to customer experience. And the first one is for you, Dayton. We've heard a lot of discussion on application economy the last few days, but what does that really mean in relation to the customer experience?
Well, I think the application economy, I think, has been defined in essentially every keynote that has gone on around here. And it's about how businesses are being rewritten by software, being redefined by software, driven by digital disruption, driven by customers changing preferences for mobility, for having an application-centric view of the world, choosing to interact with a brand or with an enterprise through an application as opposed to a human interface.
Right.
There's been a lot of conversation around some of the studies that have come out with Freeform and around what the economic rewards are of those who are taking the lead on digital disruption. Faster revenue growth by, I think, a factor of 2, higher levels of profitability by a factor of 2.5, and about a factor of 1.5 in terms of new revenue growth from new products and new services. And so the application economy is an Uber idea around digital disruption that is going on, and I think it is an enabler of something that's going to be, I think, part of buzzword bingo here around the experience economy, and it's an enabler of delivering or a different way to deliver a customer experience.
Great, thanks, Dayton. And that's a perfect segue into, in fact, you know our panel have been talking beforehand, experience economy. And I'll hand that one to you, Lily, in terms of defining that, especially related to MGM.
I mean, absolutely. I think the entire world has rotated to this idea of an experience economy, and we look at the way consumers digest content, the vacations they want to take, the restaurants they want to eat at. When you see what social media has done for businesses and how people engage with social media and what they actually talk about what they're doing, it's always about the experience. And certainly, you know, a lot has been said over the last year or two around millennials. Everything they do is around the experience. They want to be able to storytell and share the unique places they've gone. Nobody's interested in sort of living that mundane life of going to the same place everybody else has been. And so our job as marketers, and certainly at MGM Resorts, is how can we amplify their experiences? How can we like to say minimize buzz kills and provide plus ups to the experience. So we're all about buzz kills and plus ups to deliver against this experience.
Got 2 new buzzwords. That's great.
Yeah,
We'll add those.
exactly.
Oh, buzz kills, I like that.
Yeah.
Buzz kills, because that's frankly why people come to Vegas. You know, so we talk about this idea of delivering more wow into people's lives, because there is absolutely, I've been in Vegas now a year and a half in this role, and there is nobody that comes to Vegas to just have an okay time. Everybody gets off that plane and they're looking to have an extraordinary experience and moment while they're here. And so this is right in our wheelhouse of what we try and do every day, every hour here.
That's a great definition. The next one is subscription economy. And I'll pass this one to you, Jason, in terms of the ability, obviously, of customers now to turn on and turn off their loyalty to a particular provider.
Yeah, and that's really the key aspect, that today's customers vote with their choices, right? They get to choose what they want, and so for the companies that serve them, it's not, there's no the whole notion of locking in a customer because they once they make a choice they can't move. That is becoming less and less of a practical reality. So what this ends up doing is it's raising the bar on any number of different kinds of companies. So we see it, the classic example is in the mobile phone business, right, where every mobile phone provider is dealing with customer churn because it's now so easy to switch mobile phone providers, and so they're all trying to motivate you to stay and motivate you to switch to their own provider. Of course, this puts the customer in the driver's seat, and that's really what the subscription economy is about, is putting the customer in the driver's seat. So in the context of enterprise IT, subscription economy is a central facet of cloud computing, right? By moving from traditional licensed software and physical hardware to a cloud computing model, companies can pay for their IT capabilities and software on a pay-as-you-go basis. So that's completely upended the entire software, and really the entire software as well as hardware economy. So all the vendors have had to change their way of doing business, as well as the channel, right? So managed service providers, service integrators have to now change the way they do business as well, because customers are no longer buying licensed software and don't have to pay for it in the same way. So that's again shifting the responsibility and control to the customer, and that's all part of this overall story.
Thanks, Jason. Then the last one, just for Dayton, is obviously coming from a CA perspective, the technology experience.
So I'm going to parse this a little bit. I don't think it's quite the technology experience, it's the integrated experience, and I'm glad you brought it up. There's technology, and then there's the physical aspect of it as well. and both sides get actually evaluated the same way. There's the version of Maslow's hierarchy of experience, if you will, which is, first of all, was it effective? Did I get value from the interaction that I had, whether it was with a website or an application? Second, did I get it easily? Was it easy and frictionless? And third, did I have a positive emotional experience? Did I have a memorable experience? Do I want to come back to Vegas again? Do I love MGM? And it's that hierarchy of how you evaluate an experience overall, but what's also incredibly important is connecting the digital experience with the physical assets and the physical delivery to make sure that you make the promise and that you're able to follow through on it.
Right, thanks. Well, the next topic, we're going to actually focus on what companies have actually done to adapt to become far more customer-centric. And if you look at, the old way of doing things was you had the finance team who dealt with accounts receivable, accounts payables, they sent the bills. You had the supply chain, the logistics folks who delivered things. But none of them is necessarily all orientated around the customer themselves. An invoice could be sent by accounts that would raise huge issues with the customer without perhaps checking the impact that would have on the customer and the overall relationship and dialogue, for example. And what we're now seeing is much more customer-centric, outside-in view, where every single department, every single team is gold and incentivized in the right kind of organizations around that customer satisfaction. And I'd like to ask you, firstly, what changes have you seen in your career in terms of the way the companies you work for have viewed that customer experience and the importance of it? In terms of it's no longer now the responsibility of customer care or customer support or the front desk. It's everyone's responsibility.
Yeah, I will say we are still in the midst of this transformation to become more. Let's face it. I think we're always in
it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress,
right.
Absolutely, 100%. But I think something that we're trying to do, as I said, become much more consumer-centric. We are a company of brands that grew out of acquisition, which makes it that much more challenging to have a unified approach to the guest experience. And so as a pendulum swings from centralized to decentralized in terms of managing that guest experience and that customer, if you will, we are in the process of centralizing certainly a lot of our marketing efforts or direct marketing efforts, CRM, social media, actually marketing technology. We're looking at our digital marketing platform, which we've talked about. So we're trying to centralize that so that we can actually wrap our arms around it and deliver back to our ecosystem, which is these vast properties and businesses we operate, a unified approach to how we go about engendering loyalty from our guests. And so it's an ongoing evolution. We've got some big things that we're working on, but it's certainly it's an ongoing challenge. And quite frankly, just when you think you're there, you realize there's something else that you need to step forward into. So critically important, but challenging and difficult to do.
And for you, Dayton, what role does management have in terms of leading this charge?
Well, I think when you phrase it in terms of leading the charge, it's a rhetorical question. The leaders have got to lead. Right. And this is digital transformation isn't an IT project. It's fundamentally rethinking of the business model. Yeah. What is my purpose? Who are my customers? What do they need? How are we going to deliver on that need and do it in a way that is unique and differentiated and sustainable? A quick story, if I can, in terms of customer-centric transformation and top-down leadership. I had the pleasure of meeting the CEO of Vanguard Mutual Funds 3 months ago, William McNabb. And he had either the pleasure or misfortune of taking over the helm of Vanguard, this little mutual fund company down in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania that you may know about that does a lot of low-cost index funding. He took over the CEO role 2 weeks before the market collapsed in 2008. And that caused, talk about a frictionless economy. You can dump a mutual fund with the click of a button. And people panicked. They were starting to have massive withdrawals. Right. It caused a crisis in the organization. And so he took that management team through a process over a year to figure out who are they, what do they want to do, what is their core value proposition, and what is most important to their customers. And after a year, after going through this kind of journey through fire, they came back and came to the conclusion that the most important thing were their existing customers, that they were going to focus on the customers that they had, deliver a great experience, deliver great service, deliver great product, and from that, through word of mouth, they would be able to expand. Fast forward to today. In 2000, they had $25 billion of assets under management. This year, they have $3.3 trillion of assets under management. Wow. You snapped a little CAGR line, 32% growth for 15 years. in a row, which, not in a row, I'm sorry, it was a little bit bumpy in there, but 32% growth. And thinking about that experience and measuring that experience in their highest segment, the high net worth individual, they have NPS scores in the high 80s. And so when you talk about transforming a business in a very difficult environment, it has to be top down, it has to be with strong leadership, and leadership has got to take the charge and help the organization.
Because that investment obviously can really, really pay off if you do it right. And to Jason now, which particular organizations or companies have you seen that are really, setting the vanguard or the standard for customer experience? Who's really impressed you in this area?
Well, I don't know. I think it's hard to single out any one company because everybody's on their path to reorganization. Yeah. So, but there are success stories in many different industries. So, you see a lot of banks making progress. You see healthcare, pharmaceutical companies making progress. So it's really hard to single out any particular one.
You see, like banking, retail, for example. Any particular industry?
Yeah, every industry has its success stories. So, retail is an industry that is often in the vanguard of customer-driven digital transformation because of the shift from bricks and mortar to e-commerce, and now the maturation of e-commerce is driving a lot of that. So if you look at, say, Amazon.com, that would be a leader in that space. But I think it's less about the leaders and it's more about the challenges that average companies have.
Got you. Good. That actually brings us nicely on to, if you're going to be a leader, how do you understand and listen to what customers want? And then really just to kick off with yourself, Lily, how do MGM Resorts listen and have those voice of the customer programs, and what work have you been doing in that area?
Yes, I think, like most organizations of our size, especially in the hospitality industry, of course we do our customer satisfaction surveys, and once you've stayed at a resort, we want to know what we thought about it. We've actually just centralized our social media efforts so that we can, while people are in market, we can actually listen through our social channels and find out that somebody they had an issue with room service at Mandalay Bay, it didn't arrive in time. If they tweet it, we can actually intercept that, which we are doing, and make sure that we can correct that experience while they're in market. That's the most critical for us.
Intercept, wow.
Intercept, because the challenge is, when people go onto TripAdvisor or they fill out comment cards after the fact, that's not really when we want to intercept that. So we're very focused on that. But what I love about this particular business, having come from financial services, is you do have an opportunity to fix it in the moment. And we have 64,000 employees who work on the Strip, who are our eyes and ears. And so we often hold focus groups with our employees and actually get real-time feedback in terms of what's working, what's not, and then of course action plans around it. But that's a big area of focus for us, because each one of these properties, as I say, they're billion-dollar businesses. They are huge cities in and of themselves.
Yes.
I often say I worked at MasterCard. We had 9,000 employees globally. The Bellagio alone, where I work, has 9,000 employees. So we really trying to tap into the talent that we have working daily to get feedback and voice of the customer, and try, as I said, to intercept while the guest is there if there is an issue.
Sure. Right, and data, talk about listening posts and so forth. Are there any particular technologies or vehicles that you would recommend or you've seen as recognized as being particularly strong to help in terms of those VOC programs? Sure,
so I think VOC program just broadly is you're gathering information, you're definitely doing some analysis, and then I think this idea of you're making sure you're acting and closing the loop. From a tech perspective, we do a lot with surveys.
Yes.
We do a lot with relationship surveys at a high level, touch point surveys after a meaningful interaction, whether it's a support call or somebody installs some software and goes live, specifically focusing on products. Because of who we are and because of the size of our installed base, we have a lot of online communities.
Right.
So we have active conversations going on where we have text analytics where we get to kind of listen and get a feeling of which way sentiment is starting to go.
Yeah, that's a great point, sentiment.
Sentiment is a big deal in word clouds. Certainly social media is a great way to get insight. The other thing that Lilian said, which I like a lot, is sometimes you don't have to go outside. The voice of the employee inside. Employees are very smart and they know where service failure is happening. So if you want to get proactive and you want to preempt, having those conversations internally are very, very powerful. And then the last thing, and I know we're talking about technology, and maybe it's a little old school, but we like to sit down and talk to people. It's great to get a survey.
I remember that. Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember sitting and talking to people? It's great to get a survey. It's great to see text analytics. It's great to see the comments. But the thing that we do is we follow up with them. We have a conversation and say, what's behind that? And a little bit of 5 why analysis to kind of get to what are some of the root causes so we can either address them in the moment at the account for the intercept, or if it's a big initiative, a big hairy one that has to be dealt across the enterprise, we have transformation councils that we tee up, and we use those to keep the ball rolling.
Right.
And that some is high tech and some is low tech.
Right. And Jason, you embark on these programs. How do you see enterprises, global ones, scaling these kind of programs? What's your view on that?
In terms of scaling of voice of customer
VOC, yeah, and how you can launch a kind of a pilot initiative in this area. You've had that initial success. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations in terms of growing that beyond a particular geography or a business unit and so forth to make it part of what you do every day and scale out globally?
Well, I mean, I think part of the challenge is the impersonal nature of sometimes some of these voice of customer programs. I mean, I get surveys all the time from big companies, and it's like you can fill them in, or maybe you don't fill them in, and then nothing. There's nothing. It doesn't seem to make any difference, right? You're not interacting as a consumer.
There's no closed loop there.
Well, it's impersonal,
yes.
Right? So as a consumer, I fly Delta Airlines, and I get surveys from them all the time, and sometimes I fill them in, sometimes I don't, but I never get a human being saying, well, thank you, even saying thank you for filling in the survey, or if you type in something, nobody ever, it doesn't seem to have any effect.
The computer thanked you.
No, you didn't even get that. I mean, the computer sends the next survey.
Right.
And, thank you for flying on this segment, and you tell us, did the gate attendant greet you? It's like yes, no. It's like, well, is that really important to me or not? And they aren't really gathering that. So. Gathering that information. So I mean, it's a challenge because on the one hand, if you're a huge company with hundreds of thousands of customers, it's not like you can talk to all of your customers individually. Sure. But on the other hand, what customers expect is the personal experience, right?
Yes.
So you don't want your voice of customer program to be impersonal and to be buzzkill, right? You don't want to make things worse because you have an impersonal relationship with customers. So that can be a challenge, but I think that is an important part of the digital story, is that it has to, even the voice of customer program itself has to be customer focused. What do the customers want from this?
Gotcha. And that actually brings us nicely on to our next topic, which is, this slide is from Lily's prompting, which I think is great, is, we talk a lot about technology, but let's not forget some of the basics that are absolutely integral to the customer experience. And Lily, you gave me a great statistic a couple of weeks ago, which was in the last year, 67% of customers have hung up the phone out of frustration that they could not talk to a real person. I was probably one of those, maybe, but hey, I live in Germany, and it was maybe because it was in German and I didn't understand, but that's a whole other point. So, but Lily, any view on this?
Yeah, I mean, one of my mandates for the team is, although we talk a lot about technology being an enabler to the guest experience and helping them, book their room online and actually checking in online and booking room reservations and everything we do through our voice system and our digital experiences, we try and make it easier for the guests. But I think we all know at times that actually has worked the opposite way that we would have wanted. And so I want to make sure as an organization that we don't over-rotate on technology at the expense of the actual physical guest experience. And so when I talk about back to the basics, I want to make sure that when you walk into your room, the light bulbs all work, the phone trees work as they should, your room service arrives on time, the restaurant attendee greets you appropriately. So there's a lot of work that we are constantly doing with our teams here to make sure the physical experience is exactly what you need, and that we don't, and I think Jason was talking about it perfectly, that we don't forget about that personal interaction. And I'm actually just going to share a little story that recently happened to me. So when you have the title of Chief Experience Officer and you work for MGM Resorts, I get to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly. And oftentimes, if something's gone sideways, somebody will email me on a weekend. And so last weekend, I happened to get a particular email from a gentleman that was here, like many of you, getting ready to go to a convention and a conference. And he sent me a note saying, I know you're the Chief Experience Officer. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I'm wondering if you can help me. So he went on to tell me that he was at the sports book. He had a great time at the sports book, happened to win $5,600. left the sports book with a $5,000 casino chip, $600 worth of cash, and lo and behold, somewhere within that hour, lost the $5,000 chip in the casino floor. And what could I do to help him? But there's a perfect example. He's looking for a one-to-one interaction. He doesn't know what to do at this point. And so, first of all, you have to think, okay, now is this for real? Which I assumed based on the email, the way he wrote it was. And so the wonderful thing about Vegas, for those of you who don't know this, 99% of our casino floors are covered with cameras, so you cannot go anywhere and do anything without a camera. So I quickly called surveillance and security and said, here's the situation. This is a gentleman's name. What can you do? So long story short, we were able to trace every single step he made through the casino. We saw exactly where the chip fell out of his pocket. We were able to track down the gentleman who picked up the chip off the floor, who then went into the poker room. And make a long story short, that weekend we contacted the gentleman. We said it was a property of the casino, the chip. It was not his. If it was cash, he could have kept it. But since it was a casino chip and it wasn't his and it's property of the casino, could he please return it? So he did. And so make a long story short, within a couple hours, I was able to call this guest back, tell him we had his $5,000 chip. He happened to be staying at Aria, which is our property, and he was ecstatic. And so he then went on to say this was the best guest experience he had ever had. But there's a perfect example where there was a marriage of technology, which was all of our high-def cameras and surveillance, along with a personal experience to really make the
and there was I just about to say I lost a $20,000 chip last night, and maybe I won't.
I just want to know if the guy who picked up the $5,000 chip and probably lost it in the poker room, was he absolved of his debt in that room, or?
It was a really interesting, moral dilemma, I can tell you, because we watched him, the gentleman who picked up the chip, who probably knew that he should probably turn it in because. Yeah. Anyways, for 45 minutes, we watched him circle the casino, just having this moral dilemma. And he kept looking at it in his hand, saying, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do?
That's great.
And then eventually he went into the poker room, but realized.
You can post it on YouTube. It's like, what a moral dilemma actually looks like.
That's
right. In Las Vegas.
Yeah, but he was great. As I said, if it's cash, it's cash. But unfortunately, this is property of the casino. And
that's a great story. Okay, we've got a few more topics to cover, so I'm just going to speed along a bit here. Kind of bring us back to digital. Jason, what's been digital's greatest impact in terms of the customer experience? I mean, omni-channels, platforms, for example. Any other suggestions or comments there in that area?
Well, omni-channel is obviously a part of the story, but I think the story really begins with mobile technology.
Right.
And the important thing to understand about mobile technology is it didn't, for the most part, replace any other technology interactions. We're not really watching that much less television. We're not really using computers that much less.
Yeah.
I mean, in some demographics, obviously, our teenagers may not be using much computers outside of their phones. But for the most part, people who had computers still have computers. So what's happened, though, is that mobile technology is now using up a whole lot more of our time than technology ever did before. When I say our time, I mean everybody around the world, right? Developing countries as well as industrialized countries. So that's changing the whole equation in terms of what companies need to do in order to provide value to customers, because we only have 24 hours a day, we only have so much attention, and now all of a sudden, so much more of our attention is directed at our phones. That is both an opportunity and a challenge now for any company, because even if you have a non-phone experience that you're selling, well, your customers are using phones, so they're now no longer paying attention to what you're doing. So it impacts every business because the mobile technology has impacted every individual in such a substantial way in terms of minutes per day consumed by technology interaction.
Great. And Dayton, for you, has the digital world made customers more demanding, say, over the last 20 years?
Oh my, absolutely. I mean, thank you for the next rhetorical question. I mean, it's actually stunning. We were having a conversation earlier about the consumerization of IT and what you see in your iPhone. People have an expectation that, well, if I can upgrade an application on my iPhone, why can't I upgrade an application like that in a data center? I think mobility has been a huge trend. The other thing that I think has been powerful is transparency. Right. That transparency that we get on pricing is certainly the first domino to tip over, but the next one has been on reputation.
right.
and surveying. And so I love Uber, I love Airbnb, I love Lyft, where, well, of course you're going to get to rate the experience that you had, but what I also love is that now the vendor gets to rate you as a customer, and vendors can start to pick the customers that they want to do business with. I think that's
bi-directional.
It's become bi-directional, that rating system, which I think is an interesting and subtle shift that I think is going to be very, very powerful. The other thing that I think is interesting that's going on is that when you look at some of the way the applications are being built, there's a lot of personalization that's going on, but there's also a lot of neurological science behind the design of the applications, of things that are happening on phones. You know, the phrase is for them to be sticky applications, but they're actually really designed to create habits, so you come back over and over and over again. And so it's not just user-centric design that's going on, there's a lot of neurological design that's going on behind the curtain to really make that application an extension of your life, and frankly, something that you can't live without. So we've enabled it through mobility, transparency, personalization, but we're also adding to it by making sure that there's no way, I have 2 teenage girls, they cannot put that phone down, and it is not by accident.
That's a great anecdote. Lily, just looking at MGM Resorts, without giving away too many company secrets, what kind of plans do you have in this area over the next few years?
Well, we are knee-deep in a digital transformation right now. If you've spent any time on our old booking platform, our website or our mobile phone, any of those integrated platforms, they were just horrible, to be completely candid, very dated, did not allow for a great user experience. You were not able to build an itinerary, which is what people want to do when they come to Vegas. They want to book their show, dinner, room. And so now we have built a whole really content management system, which is much richer than we've ever had. The ability for a guest to do exactly what they need to do in pre-planning their trip and during their trip. And so a lot of work, we're just beginning to, it's been a 2-year design process, and we're just beginning to roll that out on our properties and also looking at our mobile platforms as well. So a lot of focus here because this is critical to our business.
Right, thank you. So almost to the end. This topic really just touches on in an era where we've discussed big data, algorithms, analytics and so forth. Dayton, what is the biggest challenge for enterprises in making sense of all this wealth of information that they can now capture and process?
Sure, I think to simplify it greatly, it's find the needle in the haystack.
Right.
With all these feeds of data coming in that you're showing on your slide and that we had talked about earlier in Voice of Customer, figuring out what matters, what's signal and what's noise. And for those of you who are trying to set up or stand up a program, the way that we get through it at CA is we have a pretty clean metrics architecture.
Right.
We understand the business outcomes that we're going after. What's the behavior that we seek that has a financial outcome? We've connected it very strongly to loyalty metrics, the loyalty metrics that matter most, and we're big on Net Promoter Score. But then getting underneath that to say, okay, what are the operational metrics, the things that we do on a day-to-day basis that drive loyalty, that ultimately drive the business outcome? And real quick, I'll give you a quick CA example. In the support organization, when I came in a few years ago, we probably had 50, 75 different metrics that we looked at.
Wow.
Once we looked at it, and they were all important. Sure. Every metric was important. Every person had their favorite one. When we took a look at it through the lens of loyalty and net promoter, there was one metric that just stood out head and shoulders, loud and clear, and it was mean time to resolution. What do customers want when it comes to support?
Fast.
I want you to solve my problem fast. I want to get to the right person right away, and I want you to minimize the amount of time. Over a 3-year period, we've invested about $10 million in some new technology, some new training, management training, et cetera. We've driven down MTTR by about 40%, and our Net Promoter Scores have been going up. We have got certified as an award-winning support organization, and we've been able to do it by being very, very clear on one thing that we wanted to be really good at it, and it just coincidentally happened to be the one thing that was most important to our customers.
Right, so focus there.
Absolutely.
Right. And Lily, have you seen, in your experience, monitoring and analysis and data capture, have you seen that evolve from your time with MasterCard and now MGM Resorts? How has that evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say that we have more data. We did at MasterCard, we do at MGM Resorts, more data than we know what to do with. And there's a lot of analysis paralysis. So I always, my mantra is how do we turn big data into small data? Because you have to actually be able to action the data, find the nuggets of consumer insight that are going to drive business results. And that's our job as marketers, which frankly isn't always as easy as one would expect. But we too look at, of all the data that we have, what's the most meaningful in driving. And actually NPS, we're sort of moving away from NPS because we find it somewhat of a volatile number that we're not sure really correlates to what we'd like it to. So we haven't had a lot of success with NPS, but we know things like, and I'm sure some of you experience this, for us, one of the biggest drivers of customer experience is how long are they waiting to check into a room in Vegas. We have 5,000 rooms, Mandalay Bay has 5,000 rooms. When we have a convention turnover, we could have 3,000 to 4,000 people checking in and checking out in one day. And as you can imagine, the average hotel, they're lucky if they do 100 check-ins in one day, and we do 4,000. And so for us, that's the buzzkill, that's the moment of truth, and we know that. And so we're hyper-focused on technology now to enable a remote guest check-in.
Right, excellent. Good. Just kind of getting close to our last area, which is the customer journey checklist. And I've devoted a little bit more time on this because I think we just want to be true to the promise of this session, which is to give all of you a little bit of a framework from the experts in terms of what they see as most critical within that customer journey. Lily, first, what would be your picking on you again?
Because I forgot this was a homework assignment and I didn't think about this.
Well, I'll hand over to Jason. How about that?
That sounds good.
I'll give you a break. So, Jason,
You've had a busy day.
From your perspective, if you had to pick, the top 3 areas that you would start with in terms of embracing that customer journey, which would you select?
Well, I really want to focus on minding the customer journey. So instead of trying to list 3, it's really about minding the customer journey. What I mean by that is that companies need to know for each individual customer where they are in the journey and interact with them appropriately for that step in the journey. And this is a real challenge because a lot of times companies don't even know where a customer is, and even if they have the data, they often don't act on it properly. So the example I like to use is let's say you go online and you're shopping for shoes, but you poke around a bit, but you don't find a pair you like, so you go do something else, and of course, what'll happen? You'll get ads for shoes, right? It's called retargeting. And if you're in the market for shoes and you haven't made a decision, well, then that's fine, right? You're getting ads for shoes, and that moves you along to a purchase. Then everybody's happy. But of course, that isn't always what happens, right? Sometimes you have actually purchased the shoes, and then what happens? Well, you keep getting ads for shoes. But I don't need any more shoes. I already got my damn shoes.
I've got 2 feet.
So, well, of course, some people may want to buy more shoes, but in this example, you only want to buy the one pair of shoes, and so. That's, if you get ads for more shoes, that's not minding where you are in the journey. Where you are is you just bought shoes. The appropriate ads would be for accessories, right? That go with your shoes. So you have to know what shoes the person bought and what accessories are appropriate and what accessories they're likely to want based upon the information you have. So that would make more sense. But how many shoe vendors actually do that, right? Of course, Another situation is, after the problem with the customer journey is it doesn't end with the purchase, right? It's called a journey for a reason. It continues on and on, right? After the purchase, you have, happy customers who might buy more, and you want to facilitate that. But you also have unhappy customers, and of course, what you want to do for those is to make them happy, right? Solve their problem. So if I bought a pair of shoes and they're defective and I tweet about it, the retailer should use a sentiment analysis to identify, there's an unhappy customer, and respond accordingly. The last thing that customer wants is ads for more shoes, right? And that's what they're likely to get today is ads for more shoes. No, they want to get a solution to their problem. Yeah. And of course, if you have a great customer experience for a solved problem, well, that customer experience example you used, you just made a customer for life. They're going to go out of their way to stay at your hotel, and they will for the rest of their lives. And that is the success story you want, because that minds the customer journey, because now you have a customer who's going to keep buying. A two-way ad? You mean a customer?
But that happens to me, and sometimes I actually don't want to look for certain products because I know I'm going to get those ads, and I'm not that interested. I'm just sort of looking.
Right, so the ads are counterproductive, right? So you don't even go shopping because you don't want the ad.
That's right.
If you see a two-way ad in the future where you can just click some button that says, I already have it.
Well, the burden is on the company, the retailer in this case, but really the company, whoever it is, to have that information, right? To be proactive, and this is part of that, the big data challenge. The information is probably there, right? It's just a question of figuring it out. I mean, there are increasingly sophisticated ways of tracking customers across touch points, right? To sort of know when a customer calls in, how that ties to their social media interaction and the web interaction. And there's still a lot of work to be done, right? We have all this technology, we have all the big data now, and retailers, but really any industry, they're struggling with how to use it properly, and that's the big challenge. We have the tools, we have to figure out how to use them.
Thanks, Jason. Dayton, you've had plenty of time to prepare there. Jason,
I've had a lot of time to think about that. Thank you. So there's probably 10 things. The big 3 that I would not leave home without or get started are start with the buyer personas.
Yeah.
Who are the different personas and segment them? Demographics, psychographics, and economics. Lifetime value of customer, they're different.
Great suggestion.
The second piece, no question, is what is the journey that they go through? And having a very clear quantitative and qualitative understanding of what that journey looks like, current state, future state, and moving from analytical to emotional. How do they feel as they move through the journey? How do you want them to feel as they move through the journey? And being able to come up with the different behaviors and moves that you need to take in order to have the customer have the feeling that they want to have as they move through the journey. The last thing is, and it has nothing to do with technology and it has nothing to do with journey mapping, but it has everything to do with change management, is making sure that you have executive buy-in from the entire organization, because organizations are lined up vertically. You're going to be having a horizontal conversation about how a customer interacts with you, not how your budgeting is done and how you're organized, and you must have top-down buy-in to do this. I think a CEO up the road here in Las Vegas, Tony Hsieh from Zappos, said it best when he said, customer service and customer experience is not the role of one department, it is the role of the entire company. And that's the type of buy-in that you need to go pull something off big and transformative like this.
Spot on, absolutely. No, that's great. So Lily, you've had a few minutes now to craft 3 dazzling answers.
Well, I don't have 3 because these gentlemen actually have said everything so eloquently. I would only add, I think for us on the customer journey piece, it's actually trying not to be on our heels, but stay one step ahead of that customer journey and experience and what they expect and where they're going.
Anticipate their needs and requirements.
And anticipate it more. And so that's the ongoing challenge for us, is how do we stay one step ahead of that, which is incredibly important in the entertainment and hospitality business.
Has that become more and more demanding over the last few years? I mean, has competition intensified here in Vegas in terms of the number of
Absolutely. I mean, the other day, one of the things we're focused in on is the hotel room of the future. I mean, all of us who've been traveling on business for personal and vacation reasons all know that a room has always looked and felt the same. You walk in, there's a bathroom, there's a bed, there's a table, there's a phone, there's a lamp. Is that really the way the room should be 5 years from now? Is that how guests want to interact and engage? Probably not. Video on demand, we don't make any money off that anymore. Who rents a movie when in a hotel room? So now we're looking at technology integrations because we know people want to use their personal device to hook up to Netflix or Apple TV. Desks are going away. A lot of the new hotels we're building no longer have desks. Nobody sits at a desk anymore. Everybody's mobile. They're on the bed or they're down in the cafe working. And so that's, we're always looking at.
I'll say I use the desk.
Don't get rid of my desk.
I'll take a desk too. I'm a business traveler.
I used it last night. The last minute presentation changes.
Right.
No.
So you guys are probably the exception then. I have never used a desk, but
that's funny.
But that's what I'm saying about trying to stay one step ahead on that customer journey, and that experience is very important.
Just that kind of human nature way people interact with the room has evolved over time. We view them in different ways, as you were saying, with being able to stream Netflix, and your room is almost a home from home. That
That's right.
I want that richness, that experience that I normally have.
Yep.
Especially if I'm traveling on business and want some home comforts.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
No, that's great. We've just got a minute left if anyone has any questions for our panel. One question, do just a little bit of short time, a really cracking good question.
No pressure.
Yeah, which slot pays best? No, we're going to ask that. So any questions, anyone? No? Okay. Well, thanks very much to our panel. Really appreciate it and hope you found that very interesting. Enjoy the concert this evening. Have a good evening. Thank you.